Hello, this is Dr. Anderson, Department Chair of Civil and Environmental Engineering. I'm going to talk to you today a little about civil engineering, the program, and kind of what you need to be thinking about um, in this 299 class as you sort of venture forward in your career at UAH, and some things to be thinking about in terms of courses and your future as a potential civil engineer. Again, a little background, all of you are in civil engineering, so you obviously understand and realize it's the right choice. Civil engineering is the oldest, it's what we call the quintessential engineering profession. Civil engineering basically comes from the word of civilization engineering, and civil engineering is essentially anything that is necessary for civilizations to thrive. If you think about anything that makes a city operate, or develops something that people can live together, that's all civil engineering. We talk about civil engineering. We're responsible for water, wastewater treatment. The water you get that comes to your home, you want to be able to drink it. You want the dirty water you send away from your home, you want that to be taken care of and cleaned and put back into the environment in a safe, efficient way. You need roadways to get where you want to go, to get product to stores, to kind of allow goods and services to be transported. Bridges, because there's creeks and rivers and things that we just have to cross. Buildings, we need structures, we need places for people to live, we need homes, apartments, stores, office buildings. All of these buildings need to be constructed in such a way that they don't collapse on people. Again, civil engineering making all this possible. We talk about, generally we think about civil engineering, we design, build, and maintain urban infrastructure. And it doesn't, have to be urban infrastructure. It's rural infrastructure. It's offshore infrastructure. In the future, potentially is going to be space infrastructure, but it is infrastructure required. When we look at some of the big picture issues, some of the big sort of, quests for the future for engineering in general, several of them have civil engineering, at the very, heart of it. We talk about creating sustainable communities for society, environment, and economy. What does it mean to be sustainable? How do we develop sustainable communities? How do we work transportation, structures, construction, the environment? How do we work all these things together into something that's sustainable moving forward? There's a big emphasis on reinforcing and rebuilding our infrastructure system. A lot of the infrastructure in the United States, a lot of it is old. It's almost to or past its original design life, and we're still using it. So a lot of this infrastructure in a lot of our larger cities, it needs to be upgraded. It needs to be rebuilt. It needs to be refurbished. It needs to be rehabilitated. There's a lot of work in that. We talk about integrating sustainability and profitability. It's not good enough just to say we're going to be sustainable. It's got to be affordable. A lot of times we talk about the notion that an engineer can do something the average person can do in half the time and a third the cost. So, we need engineers to understand the economics of what they're doing, the cost of what they're doing, how to balance profit with sustainability. There's a concept moving forward that redefines mobility. How do we travel? Who has the ability to travel? Are we all going to drive private cars? Are self-driving cars coming? What is mobility going to look like 20, 30 years from now? It may look completely different than it does today. And obviously, we're always seeking renewable energy, reducing footprints. How can we make things more energy efficient? How do we distribute energy in communities? And how do we sort of reduce pollution associated with energy and energy production? So again, all of this is civil engineering from the past looking forward. And again, you're in civil engineering 299, so you obviously made the right choice already. So let's talk about, the next few years, The biggest thing you're probably going to question and people are going to talk about is what electives am I going to take? The curriculum is pretty much laid out. Everyone takes the same set of classes with the exception of this notion that you get to choose a concentration. And we have essentially three concentrations. We have an environmental, a structural, and a transportation. And there's also a fourth, if you want to call it this, which is a general option, which means you don't necessarily pick a specialty. If you want to take the environmental option, there's two classes you take. There's water quality control process and hydrology. And one deals with wastewater and how to clean wastewater. The other class in this deals with how to control flooding, how to understand, rainfall events and water control so that we don't have, bridges washed out. We don't have flooding. We control sort of the rain and the environment and things we build. And the structural concentration, there's two classes. There's structural analysis 2, which goes beyond, everyone will take structural analysis 1, and structural analysis 2 will go beyond and looking at more indeterminate structures, more, different kinds of building frames, different kinds of construction, and how do we analyze it. There's also a course on bridge design, looking at, what do we design? How do we design a bridge? What goes into designing a bridge? Again, if you want to, really be a structural engineer upon graduation, you're probably going to want to take the structural concentration option. Under the transportation option, there's introduction to geographic information systems, which is essentially computerized mapping. So it's looking at how do we understand maps? How do we understand computerized maps? How do we use different kinds of maps for transportation projects? How do we work that together? The other course is urban transportation planning, which is kind of looking big picture at a community. It's trying to understand, if I'm going to, have a community today, what's my community going to look like 20, 30 years from now? And how do I establish or prioritize road decisions or transportation related decisions for my community to best serve my community 30 years from now? Because it's going to take 10 to 15 years to get a road built. So we don't want to be playing catch up. We don't want to always be 10, 15 years behind trying to build our way out of problems. How do we look forward and how do we plan accordingly so that, when people show up, when the needs arrive, we have the infrastructure in place. And as I mentioned, there's the general option as well. And the general option basically says, I'm not going to specify as a student. I'm just going to, I'm going to take a couple courses, whichever two I find most interesting, potentially whichever instructor you would like to have an extra course with, and just take two classes and go on about your way and graduate. Now, a lot of the misconception on this concentration is that students seem to think it'll lock them into a certain career path. It doesn't do that. It's just a way that we allow for you, the students, to take some classes, basically as a senior that you find more interesting than other classes. You think they might help you in your career. You have an interest in them. They just sound appealing to you, and go ahead and take the classes. There's no difference in the degree. There's nothing tagged on your diploma that says you took the structural or the environmental or the transportation option. It just is a civil engineering degree. It's just concentrated into specific classes if you want. So again, if you're interested in the environment and want to do environmental engineering, the goal is protect and improve environmental quality, protect human health and well-being. Again, clean air, clean water, when it rains a lot, we don't have a lot of flooding. That's important. We need this in society. Structural engineering, concerned with the structural design, structural analysis of infrastructure. Buildings, bridges, offshore structures, tunnels, flyovers, dams, anything that's going to essentially be made out of steel and concrete. And in the future, these things might be made out of other materials, composite fibers, other things, but essentially building materials. Transportation engineering is really looking at the planning, design, operation, maintenance, and safe, efficient transportation system. And talking about moving forward with intelligent transportation systems, understanding, what to build, when to build, the notion of self-driving cars, we're working that direction. Is that going to change how people travel in the future? Is that going to change roadway capacity? Is it going to change how things are done? Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of questions associated with self-driving cars. They have to still be answered. There's a lot of work to be done in these areas. So again, there's lots of, options for you. And, when you graduate, a lot of times you're going to get a position or a job, and you may not just do one specific area. You may say, oh, I'm an environmental engineer. Well, the environmental engineer has to deal with transportation. They have to deal with structures. They have to deal with environment. They have to deal with other generalized civil engineering topics. So even though you pick a concentration you find most interesting, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that's the only thing or the only area you're going to be working in. Now, another program here at UH that you might want to consider is the JUMP program. JUMP program is a path into graduate school when you're a senior. And, again, you're taking 299. You might be asking yourself, I'm only a sophomore level student. Why are you talking about graduate school? Well, as you'll get further in your program, you'll hear a lot more about graduate school and the advantage potentially of having a master's degree versus just having an undergraduate degree. And so the JUMP program at UH allows for students who are juniors or at the end of their junior year to complete 98 credit hours and have a minimum GPA of 3.5. You can enroll in UH graduate school. And while you're finishing out your senior year, you can actually take 9 credit hours of 500 or graduate level classes and use them for both your senior level 400 classes as well as graduate school courses. And so the goal of the program is students will complete both an undergraduate and a graduate degree with these 9 credits of sort of carryover classes that count for both degrees. And it allows you the advantage of getting through quicker with a master's degree in engineering. Again, if you're interested in this, look into this JUMP program as well. And lastly is if you have any questions about civil engineering, feel free to contact us. This is just a screenshot from our website. Almost all of these people are reasonable, friendly people who would, sit down, answer your questions, send them an email, set up a time. They'll meet with you. And I say almost all. I'd probably say most of them. I'm kidding. We'll all answer your questions. So, if you have questions about the program, you have questions about the area, questions that tie to a specific area of civil engineering, check out our website, find out who we are, ask the questions. If you don't know who to ask me. I'm the department chair. I can probably answer your question and or get you to the person who probably is better than me at answering your question. And, we'll make sure that, what you're looking for in our program, you can find. All right. Last, I forgot to tell you, we're over in Tech Hall S201 is the main office. Again, look us up on the webpage. If you have a question, feel free. And thanks. And good luck to all of you. And I'll be seeing you in class pretty soon, I'm sure.